Hello, my name is Antonio de la Oliva, Associate Professor of University Carlos III of Madrid, and I will act as moderator of this IEEE GLOBECOM 2020 industry panel titled Advanced Wireless Research Platforms Towards 6G. This panel brings together speakers from three key initiatives working on the establishment of research infrastructures across different geographical areas. The Horizon 2020 PAWR project, aiming at fostering the collaboration between Europe and USA in the advanced wireless research field, the PAWR Office, in charge of developing the key advanced wireless infrastructure projects in the USA, and the Horizon 2020 5G project, a joint action between Europe and Taiwan on validating through experimentation 5G in vertical scenarios. During the last years, due to the final stage of research in 5G, there has been a common need across the researchers in the area, the need of infrastructures, enabling the testing of end-to-end applications, possibly including modifications across the full protocol stack. This need has materialized in different programs across Europe, USA, and Asia for the development of testbeds specifically focused on different use cases. Of course, each geographical region has its own specificities and focus. In this panel, we will focus first on the key technological trends towards 6G and the roadmap towards the development of the new generation of technologies. After that, we will analyze the different research needs and infrastructures worldwide, finalizing with a special focus on the PAWR and PAWR initiatives. So this panel is therefore structured in 4 parts. We will start with a presentation on the path to 6G, target capabilities and technology trends by Dr. Alain Mourad from InterDigital UK. We will continue the panel with the presentation New Directions to Research Infrastructures in Digital Science by Dr. Serge Fdida, professor at Sorbonne University in France. And we will finish with an overview of the PAWR platform for advanced wireless research by Dr. Abhimanyu Gosain, technical director of PAWR. We will finish this panel with a questions and answer session where selected questions will be answered by the panelists. So, without more dilation, let me present our first speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Alain Mourad, Director of Engineering of Research and Development at InterDigital UK. Alain is currently leading the Next Generation Radio Access Network Group at InterDigital, although he has worked on several technological companies such as Samsung and Mitsubishi. Alain is a prolific inventor, and his work makes him aware of all the different new players and key technologies that have the potential to highly impact the research in advanced wireless networks. So thank you very much, Alain. I will share now your presentation, going full screen, and please go ahead whenever you want.
Hello, my name is Alain Mourad. I'm a Director of Engineering at InterDigital. The title of my talk today is On the Path to 6G, Target Capabilities and Technology Trends. First, I will start with megatrends that are underpinning the path to 6G. So here I present 5 trends on the path to 6G, 2 mega market trends and 3 mega technology trends. The first market trend is on the race for 6G research leadership. The second market trend is on the momentum that's gathering for the support of more verticals. The first technology trend is on the rise of data-driven networks with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Second technology trend is on the widespread virtualization and disaggregation of the network across all domains in the network. And the last technology trend or mega trend is on new spectrum and new regulation. So these 5 trends are depicted on the chart on the left in terms of impact, short term, medium term, and long term, but also in terms of certainty, low, medium, and high. So if we take the race for 6G research leadership, this is highly certain, and this is with immediate impact. It's happening now. We take the support of more verticals, so this is highly certain with short to medium term impact. The widespread virtualization in all domains of the network and the network disaggregation, including in the radio access network. So this is fairly certain with short to medium term impact. The rise of data-driven networks with AI/ML. So this is kind of medium term impact with medium certainty. And the new spectrum and new regulation beyond 5G, this is a bit of longer-term impact with medium or low kind of certainty. So starting with the first mega trend on the race for 6G research leadership, the key insight here is such a race is already on. So we heard a number of announcements from multiple regions and governments launching their multi-billion US dollars, multi-year government research programs on 6G, but also key stakeholders, big companies that already announced their 6G roadmaps and already launched or opened their 6G labs all around the world. So if you take, for example, here some examples, in Europe we have the next framework program, the Horizon Europe, 2021-2027, including an initiative around 6G under the name of Smart Networks and Services. There's also the 6G flagship initiative launched in Finland a couple of years ago. In the USA, multiple initiatives around beyond 5G, 6G, such as the FCC experimental framework for above 95 gigahertz, and the O-RAN bill, obviously, but also the recent announcement from ATIS on the next generation wireless alliance. In China, in Japan, in South Korea, all governments already announced 6G programs with ambitious timelines, aiming for, in some cases like in South Korea, for launching some 6G trials as soon as 2026. So what does this race actually mean for us? Us meaning the R&D industry. So it clearly puts the onus on us to drive harmonization across all these research agendas and push this into a common 2030 system vision and requirements in international forums like the ITUR and the GSMA and NGMN, amongst others. So let's move to the second market trend on the support of more verticals. So the key insight here is that industrial applications or Industry 4.0 applications remain the biggest area of growth for wireless communication and the major driver indeed for the evolution of 5G requirements. So if we take examples here, the 5G Alliance for Connected Industries and Automation, mainly led out of Europe, and 5G DNA, Deterministic Networking Alliance, led out of China. We clearly see these alliances already driving a number of use cases with extreme requirements into organizations like 3GPP. Right? And that's mainly evident in terms of new requirements around end-to-end latency, pushing the envelope down to below 10 millisecond, and also on the reliability side, pushing the envelope from 5 nines today up to 8 nines for some use cases. So in terms of impact, it's crystal clear actually that the support of verticals in 5G is already the beginning of a long journey, and beyond 5G, 6G still has much work to do in these markets that 5G has promised to support. So the first technology trend here is on the rise of data-driven networks with AI/ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning. So the key insight here is that AI/ML has already penetrated a number of areas like in the web technology, network technology, and chip technology. And this will only continue as the AI/ML matures and more data becomes available. So if I take just as a few examples there on the left, so already announcements for support of AI and automation and network management solutions, for example, by Ericsson. There is already on the website the Google RankBrain. And when it comes to the AI chip sector, this is really booming. So the forecast there is for such a market to increase by a tenfold from about $7-8 billion 2019 up to $92 billion by 2025. And there are so many companies active in this space: Google, Apple, ARM, Intel, NVIDIA, AMD, Baidu, Graphcore, Qualcomm, you name it. All major stakeholders driving such a boom in the AI chip sector. So the impact of this trend is clearly it has a potential to disrupt the design of future wireless networks and devices, and this is across all domains. So the core, the access, the edge, and the terminal device as well. The widespread virtualization and disaggregation. I mean, 5G is already built with on virtualization. So virtualization is at the core of the core network and the edge network solutions in 5G already. But we clearly see that the momentum is now gathering for virtualization and disaggregation in the radio access network with initiatives like O-RAN, SDRAN, or Open RAN. So this trend is indeed quite disruptive, not only in terms of technology, but also in terms of business, IPR, and regulatory side as well. So, so even if the technology challenges are overcome, it is likely that it will take until 6G before the full breadth and depth of virtualization and disaggregation are realized across all domains of the network. So core, edge, and RAN indeed. So the fifth mega trend is on the new spectrum new regulation. So the key insight here is this move to the higher frequency bands, definitely. So already in 5G, this started by going up to 52.6 gigahertz in the release 16 of 3GPP. And already we see in 3GPP the evolution of 5G in release 17 and beyond. There is a drive to move up in the frequency spectrum to 70 gigahertz and up to 100 gigahertz or beyond 100 gigahertz. Likewise, for the new regulatory models, I mean, it's the first time indeed in 5G that we have seen regulators dedicating spectrum, private license spectrum for verticals. And such a trend is going to only continue to go more and more in beyond 5G. So there's already spectrum considerations beyond 5G, not only in the high frequency above 95 gigahertz or 100 gigahertz, but also in the 6 gigahertz as well. And the impact of this, especially when it comes to the very high frequencies of 100 gigahertz, is that it will require new design frameworks or re-engineering of several of the design elements in the current 5G new radio system, including waveforms, codecs, massive MIMO technology, MAC protocols, and so on. So having surveyed briefly 5 megatrends before, so let's move now to see how these megatrends are converted in terms of target capabilities and technology trends that 6G ought to deliver on. So before we dive on the capabilities and technology trends for 6G, let us stop first here on the key stakeholder forums that will drive the 6G journey. So here I depict a number of these stakeholder forums, from the most exploratory research forums on top, such as the Horizon Europe framework program, all the way down to the 3GPP, which is the heartbeat of what the 6G specifications are going to be. So if we just take a few examples here, so if you take the research program in Horizon Europe, that's envisioned to follow similar kind of three phases approach that was followed for the 5G development in the Horizon 2020, and that includes a phase of research, exploratory research at the beginning until 2023, followed by pre-standards and proof of concepts, and concluding with some pilots and trials when the specifications are already known and available. ITUT is already active in driving technology trends such as machine learning for 5G and beyond, Network 2030, but also increasingly in areas such as AI, distributed ledger, quantum communication, and so on. IPR, which is a heartbeat again of setting out the vision of IMT 2030, and importantly setting the requirements, and finally issuing recommendations of which candidate technologies from the standard bodies meet or exceed or don't meet the requirements set for IMT 2030. So this is going to continue with two milestones in this next decade: the World Radio Conference 2023 and the World Radio Conference 2027. ETSI is already playing a major role into driving a number of these technology trends, such as millimeter wave transmission, edge compute, network intelligence, zero-touch management, distributed ledger. IETF is already specifying, working on specification in terms of transport for immersive multimedia, deterministic networking, reliability, availability for wireless, automation, and network management, and so on. And these will only continue and expected to impact the 6G technology agenda. IEEE now with focus set on the Wi-Fi 7 by the 2022 or 2023, but also launching a number of study groups around sensing, drone sensing communication, terahertz, and so on. And these will drive a further agenda for the evolution of Wi-Fi, both in the, let's say, 6 gigahertz or sub 10 gigahertz kind of frequency, but also in the higher frequencies as well. That will all be part of the 6G landscape. 3GPP already working on the release 17 to advance 5G, and release 18 in the next 2-3 years, followed by some form of 5G Advanced Pro, release 1920, to only start to break away from the backward compatibility requirement around the mid of this decade, so 2025, 2026, when release 20, or 21 and 22 are anticipated to be the releases that will see the specification of 6G as such. So let's now move to the wireless capabilities, future wireless capabilities. So what we present here is the capabilities for the radio interface, such as spectrum, bandwidth, user data rate, reliability, mobility, connection density. So all these capabilities defined as official capabilities in the ITUR for IMT 2020. And so we present the values, the current capabilities as targeted in IMT 2020 in green in the 2020 column. And for the 6G or IMT 2030, so we present the direction of travel indeed. So if I take a few examples here, the spectrum, so today in IMT 2020, the spectrum is up to 100 gigahertz. So the spectrum in IMT 2030 or 6G is expected to reach highs of up to 300 gigahertz. So a significant improvement or evolution as compared to what the state of art is today in IMT 2020. Of course, as the spectrum goes up, the bandwidth will go up. So the bandwidth today in the high frequencies of 5G, they go up to 1 gigahertz. So such single channel bandwidth is anticipated to be above 10 gigahertz in IMT 2030. So this will obviously drive up the peak data rate, but also the user data rate to reach highs of 1 gigabit per second user data rate, especially for multisensory, extreme reality, and volumetric media streaming kind of use cases. Latency is high on the agenda, both user plane and control plane, and it will significantly reduce user plane latency to below 0.5 millisecond. So we talk here microsecond scale, a few hundred microsecond scale, especially for use cases around connected industries, autonomous vehicles, and tactile use cases. Control plane as well, anticipated to significantly improve from below 20 milliseconds today and 10 milliseconds desired today in IMT 2020 to less than 5 milliseconds, and again for similar Industry 4.0 and autonomous vehicles kind of use cases, such as a user plane. Reliability is already being pushed up from the 5 nines that it is today in IMT 2020 to 8 nines for use cases brought by Industry 4.0 alliances. Connection density multiplying by a factor of 10 to reach 10 devices per square meter or 10 million devices per square kilometer. And that's for scenarios or use cases around ultramassive sensor networks. Energy efficiency high on the agenda. So despite being qualitative, only qualitative in IMT 2020, so energy efficiency is envisioned to be one of the key capabilities on the 6G wireless interface. So both in terms of driving up the terminal and network energy efficiencies, perhaps 1,000 times the value that they are today in 5G. Positioning accuracy, not an official requirement in IMT 2020, but becoming increasingly pushed as a potential requirement for 6G, with positioning accuracy going really below a few centimeters indoor and a few centimeters outdoor, and that's helped by communication and non-communication technology such as sensing. Mobility, seeing some boost there from the 500 km/h that's today in IMT 2020, and reaching 1,000 km, especially for flying objects like airplanes, supported obviously by the integration of terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks. So having presented the wireless capabilities just before, so let's now see the technology trends that will help meet these target capabilities as 6G. So here we present the technology trends on the left, their state of art today in 2020, and the roadmap for these technology trends all the way up to 2030. So if I pick, for example, on the spectrum side, which today is around designs for backhaul and access, both in the sub-6 gig and in the higher frequencies, going up to 100 gig. So this is, in the short term, we see this, these spectrum technologies to only be enhanced, but still remain within that 100 gigahertz cap. For example, the 3GPP today in the release 17 and beyond, exploring just above 71 gigahertz. So there is also the view that there's some exploration of new spectrum in the 6 gigahertz, but also above 100 gigahertz. That's in the short term. As we move to the medium term, so that's where it is anticipated that we will break that cap of 100 gigahertz, which will require some new design for that spectrum above 100 gigahertz, and we'll see technologies around AI-aided spectrum management, early drops of joint sensing and communications, and in the long run, as we go significantly above 100 gigahertz up to the 300 gigahertz, so this is where a complete new design is expected with some form of integration of the sensing and communications capabilities, reaching a full-fledged integration. If we take, for example, the massive MIMO, so this is in the short term, expected to see some enhancements in the beamforming, especially for higher frequencies and multi-user scenarios. As we look at the midterm, so this is where the focus in terms of technology is expected to be around larger antenna arrays and super directivity at higher frequencies and distributed and coordinated multi-point schemes. And as we look to the long-term 6G vision, on this specific topic. So this is where we see holographic beamforming, phased array antennas in the 1024 elements or more, reconfigurable intelligent surfaces, AI at the heart of ultramassive MIMO schemes. If I pick, for example, multi-connectivity, so today is just around dual connectivity in the 3GPP, but also dual access between 3GPP and Wi-Fi. So this, in the short term, the focus of the technology is much around integrating the access, both licensed and unlicensed access, both in 3GPP and non-3GPP, such as Wi-Fi, but also taking considerations of such as integration of access and backhaul as well, so enhancements to the AIB. Now, as we look in the medium and long term, so this is where the agenda is clear in terms of pushing the envelope of multi-connectivity, multi-access to licensed, unlicensed, but importantly terrestrial and non-terrestrial, wireless and optical wireless, and all this aided by some form of AI to achieve some smart multi-access management. If I take the positioning down there, so the positioning today, even though it's not a requirement as such, but still the 3GPP in its releases try to achieve some below 1 meter accuracy. And this accuracy is already being pushed up with to the level of 20 centimeter or so in the next release 17-18 of the 3GPP. So that's the short term. And as we look at the longer term, there's very much the promise of bringing this down to a few centimeters, especially based on the integration of sensing, RF fingerprinting, also integration with non-terrestrial networks and the use of AI. So the same way we did for the wireless capabilities, here we do for the future network capabilities. So here we talk about capabilities such as automation, flexibility, latency, determinism, coverage, security, and trust. And the state of art in the Network 2020 today is given in green, and the direction of travel, again, presented in blue towards Network 2030. So again, for the sake of time here, I'll try to pick a few of these capabilities. So if I take automation, so today the network, state of the network today is to a large extent still human operated. And the vision there in terms of automation capability for Network 2030 is that the network is going to be self-operating, where human operators are only required to validate certain decisions. If I take the service deployment time, so it's today within a few hours to get a new service deployed in the network. And this is envisioned to reduce by a factor of 10 to a few dozen of minutes, especially through technologies such as slice creation and instantiation of the slice on the fly. End-to-end application level latency from few tens of milliseconds today down to few milliseconds range in terms of response time of the network. And determinism and resiliency, which is today still limited to the wired network. This is anticipated to extend its support to wireless networks, especially for industrial wireless, through DetNet and determinism and resilient networking. If I take coverage, for example, so today is still segregated between terrestrial and non-terrestrial. This is anticipated as we move up to 2030 to see some form of ubiquitous coverage based on the integration of terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks. So very much as we did before, so here we present also some of these technology trends that will help meet the network capabilities presented earlier. So technology trends such as edge native compute, virtualization, slicing, automation and network AI ML, non-terrestrial networks, distributed ledgers, and quantum internet. The state of art is presented in green, and then the short-term, medium-term, and long-term evolution of the technology trend is depicted in blue. So if I take, for example, the edge native compute, so today the state of art is, we have edge cloud solutions. There is ongoing specification in ETSI and in 3GPP. So this will continue in the short term to form some integration between 5G and edge to achieve that integration, but also increasingly move to distributed edge enhancements such as microservices. As we move to the medium term, the focus is envisioned to be around inter-edge interworking and federation, but also the support of mobile and power-constrained edge hosts. And as we look to the long term of this technology trend, so this is where we see intelligent edge, so AI powering the edge, and a seamless integration across all domains, cloud, edge, and far edge, including the terminal device. If I take another technology trend like the automation and network AI ML, so this is still today very much around big data based management solution in the OSS, BSS, and some framework, enablement framework in 3GPP and ETSI. So this will continue, and we see it actually coming to the RAN already with the ORAN, with the non-real-time kind of RAN management powered by AI. And in the medium term, so this is where we see it more zero-touch management and automation and network management, but also coming to near real-time in the RAN and small data-based distributed analytics, distributed AI, both for the control and the user planes. And as we look to the long term, so this is where we see a full-fledged automation and distribution of the AI end-to-end, including on the device. If I take non-terrestrial networks, so today we have still this separation, separate systems, but also ongoing specification for future integration in 3GPP. So in the short term, we see this to continue, we see this continuing, and to achieve some form of convergence with terrestrial networks in areas like virtualization, edge, slicing, and latency, and some form of seamless integration with terrestrial, so unified connectivity, extreme coverage in the midterm. And long term, we see some extensions here to support really massive miniaturized satellites and high altitude platforms, HAPS. So, okay, so here we come to a few takeaways from my talk. So it's clear that today we are still in the quite early stages of the rollout of 5G, but there is still a long way to go with the evolution of 5G. That said, it's the right time actually to ask ourselves what's coming up next. And the emerging use cases for beyond 5G and 6G, they all seem actually quite familiar. And indeed, they hide the truth that 5G may only open the door for these use cases. Extreme requirements will continue to push the evolution of wireless well beyond 5G, such as we've seen in the Industry 4.0, and in time will enable a new service experience. So looking out to the future, on the promising technology trend lines, it does indeed appear that there will be inflection points that will lead to 6G. So with this, I'd like to thank you for your attention and acknowledge the Horizon 2020 Empower project for the work done on capabilities and technology trends, but also the 6G work regarding the mega trends that I presented today in my talk. With this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alain. This was very interesting. Let's move forward to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Serge Fdida. Serge is a very well-known researcher who has contributed significantly to the evolution of networking testing across Europe. He is currently coordinating the French National Research Instrument FIT and the OneLab facility, one of the first federated internet testbeds. He is currently coordinating the Empower project. Serge, please go ahead. I will share your presentation full screen. You can start whenever you want. Thank you very much.
Hello. It gives me great pleasure to share with you some directions regarding research infrastructures in digital sciences. But let me first put this presentation in context. You have seen the difficulty of the debate between the scientific community and the society at large regarding the episode dealing with the COVID-19. And this is certainly due to the fact that providing evidence is based on a formal methodology that is a long and complex process, often grounded on experimentally driven research. And this is because science should be based on evidence. But evidence is often trust that is delegated to third parties like scientific journals or the most prestigious researchers. It is unfortunate to observe that most published research findings are false. This is illustrated by this seminal publication from John Ioannidis in 2005, who shows that the likelihood of a published research finding to be false increases even with the popularity of the domain. The first message is that experimentation should be considered as a discovery process, an important piece of the discovery process. I remember a few years ago listening to a talk from Serge Fdida, former Nobel Prize in Physics, presenting how he was exploring the quantum to classical boundaries by thought experiments. And he was discussing about this experiment that Schrödinger considered impossible to realize because you were trying to observe an event that should occur in the future. So experimentally research methodology should be grounded on three principal targets. What are the fundamental problems that we want to address? What is the purpose or the value of an experiment? And can the experiment be certified or reproduced? However, research infrastructures as a scientific instrument are used in many other disciplines, as you can see here, for instance, with high energy physics. So it's a very important component for providing evidence in scientific domains. And for instance, in Europe, you have a framework which is called S3, European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures, which is dealing exactly with that topic. Defining a scientific instrument within S3 is based on a life cycle approach, where you start from the idea, what is the scientific question that you want to address, then you move to the design, which is related to the requirements, and then to the preparation of the infrastructure, the implementation, deployment, the operation, and the termination. So as you can see, this is a long and very well formalized process. But so far, if you look at S3 2080 landmark, what you see is that all projects are dealing with important scientific fields, but digital sciences. A new group has been opened in 2018 on research infrastructures related to digital sciences, in addition to e-infrastructures. However, if you look at the publication that are making reference to research infrastructures in computer science, and especially in the field of engineering, then you see that the number is increasing. So there is some kind of a contradiction between the demand, which is clearly increasing, and the lack of a scientific instrument in that domain. This is also maybe because of the lack of responsibility of a community, because building an infrastructure has never been really rewarded by the community. I remember this workshop organized at Infocom, the CNERT workshop, dealing with the wish list for experimenters. And what you observe is that first, the target audience is broad, ranging from those dealing with wireless to those interested in HPC and distributed systems. And finally, what you end up is a very fragmented situation. Another concern that we have is that there are researchers who are interested in the core of the infrastructure, while others are mostly interested by the application, the so-called verticals. However, following the first and second waves of test platforms in digital infrastructures or in networking at large, so the first phase being, for instance, facilities like PlanetLab or Orbit, and the second phase being the GENI initiative in the US or the FIRE initiative in Europe, there is now a third phase, which is developed in the US with the so-called NSF PAWR platforms, or NSF Fabric or Colosseum. And there is similarly a very big initiative like GENI in China. In Europe, there is a different initiative, which is based on the so-called ICT 17 and 19 projects. And worth to mention, the PAWR support action, which is meant to support joint efforts between the US and Europe regarding advanced wireless platforms for sharing the demand for developing joint activities related to experimentation or joint infrastructures. And this is because the problem is, of course, very challenging. In addition to that, we have to mention the very important initiative from other actors, like the tech giants. For instance, if you look at the ACM SIGCOMM scientific publication, you will observe that many of those publications come from the tech giants. And this is partly because they have access to very advanced infrastructures. And we have to take into account also a very important initiative from the open software environment, like ONAP, ONRAN, or ONF. So the science of networks, of course, is powered by technology and is advancing very quickly. But I would like maybe to state that we still have to define scalable, robust, and secure digital infrastructure. So this is really the scientific question and the challenge ahead of us. And I would like maybe just to illustrate the evolution of the computer networks through those two quotes. The first one is very famous from John Gage in 1984, "The network is a computer," meaning that you cannot consider the network without the cloud today. And the second is from Nick McQuon, a little bit provocative at ONF Connect 2020, saying that we will think of a network as a programmable platform, which of course is already quite well understood. We will no longer think in terms of protocol. Instead, we will think in terms of software, meaning that, again, the test platforms will mostly be built around software, which maybe provide us with an important opportunity. So let me just share some thoughts about the design study of a research infrastructure in digital infrastructures. What we want to achieve is a fully controllable, programmable, and virtualized digital infrastructure. That's the test platforms that we would like to provide as a scientific instrument to a community. The abstractions are quite well defined today. An authority is managing resources and users. Users can access to those resources by booking those resources into what we call the slice. Slices are run concurrently and, of course, are used to support the experiment of the user. This should be seen as what could be an infrastructure in order to support the demand. And as you can see, it has to involve the different components like IoT, wireless, edge, backbone, and core. So you see here the different physical infrastructure that should be deployed in order to support experiments in the future. But most importantly, we have to provide the software of this test platform, which will be organized into a control plane in order to manage the virtualized infrastructure, an experimental plane in order to control the experiment and collect the data, a portal with a single sign-in interface, and, very important, a data management plan in order to support reproducibility. So there is a single sign-in that will be provided to the user, articulated the different infrastructure that will be deployed in different sites. The reference architecture should be organized with respect to a physical infrastructure with different components, physical components, and a software infrastructure that will be able to orchestrate the deployment of the experiments on the virtualized infrastructures. The architecture will be based on two complementary components: the design time, in order for the user or the experimenter to design the experiment, define the resources that will compose the slice, and for the policies, and the runtime component in order, of course, to execute the experiment on the slice. And this will require different type of components that are related to the resource management, the different controllers, the orchestration of the resources in the facility, the policy and slice management, the analytics, and so on and so forth. The idea here is to have a continuous deployment and execution of the infrastructure. An important point, and especially this has always been true in other domains, is to deal with the access policy that has to be fair, the open data, and the concern, of course, which is related to sustainability. We can use this facility also for other innovative purposes, and I would like here maybe to take 5 minutes to discuss the issue related to reproducibility. Reproducibility is not really new, and this is testified by this publication dated 1992, expecting that because of the development of the digital information age in research, we will see more and more reproducible research. But this is not yet the case, and especially in our domain, despite different initiatives like the ACM good experiments in order to label research that can be demonstrated to be reproducible, or the EARTH initiative in Europe, which aims to provide open and seamless services for storage, management, analysis, and reuse of research data. This is related to all fields of science. Of course, the seminal work from Lisa Yan and Nick McQuern related to reproducing network research as a master classes. The initiative taken at ACM Connect in order also to value paper that can also provide reproducibility capacity. Even if you look at this website, you will see that there exist some companies now that are dealing with labeling reproducible scientific publication. And worth to mention as well, the Empowering Repeated Research initiative that we have launched within the PAWR support action. So this is all very important, but still a lot of work has to be done. And let me now conclude with introducing SLICES. So SLICES is a European attempt to develop, or initiative to develop, a scientific instrument that will be targeting all research communities, ranging from IoT to distributed system and HPC. This is an initiative that is meant to be hopefully supported by the S3 framework within a framework of more than 10 years. And as you can see here, there is a large support from the research community, including industrial companies, as well as different other stakeholders. And what we believe is that it is really, really important that our community is putting a lot of emphasis on experimentally driven research and a scientific instrument to support this research, as it is the case since long in other scientific domains. Thank you very much for your attention and looking forward.
Thank you very much, Serge. Moving forward to our last speaker, let me introduce you to Dr. Abhimanyu Gosain from Northeastern University. He is currently the Technical Program Director for PAWR Office and the Director of Industry Engagement for the Institute of Wireless Internet of Things at the Northeastern University. He is in charge of setting the strategic goals and research agenda for the Public-Private Partnership for the NSF Platforms for Advanced Wireless Research, the PAWR program, and the DARPA Colosseum program. So thank you very much, Abhimanyu. I will go into full screen and you can start whenever you want.
Hello, I'm Abhimanyu Gosain, Technical Program Director for the Platforms for Advanced Wireless Research program in the United States. Thank you for the opportunity to present at this Advanced Wireless Research Platforms Towards 6G panel today here at IEEE GLOBECOM. I just want to start with a brief introduction of myself and the program. I'm a technical program director at the NSF PAWR program, but also part of the leadership at the Institute for Wireless Internet of Things at Northeastern University. We coincidentally also organized the first US-based 6G symposium, so we have some thoughts to share from that particular venue here. With respect to advanced wireless research platforms, I represent the program at the Open Air Interface Software Alliance at the board level, members of the ORAN Alliance, the Telecom Infra Project, as well as inheriting and operating the world's largest channel and network emulator called the DARPA Colosseum here in the US. And we manage a very strong telecom industry consortium of 35 partners. So basically distilling all of that experience, would like to share my thoughts on where wireless research platforms in the 6G era, what they're going to look like and how they're going to be shaped and how we can collectively begin to think about it. So the keyword that we are beginning to see as the conversation shifts from 5G, at least in the early research and development part, is towards open test beds. Why? Predominantly in the ecosystem, these networks, mobile communication continues to get extremely complex, but it also continues to move more into the softwareized world. The hardware outside of the RF chain and the antennas, which are getting more and more complex, there are commodity off-the-shelf software-defined radios, FPGAs, CPU, x86, or GPUs that are being used on the compute fabric. But it becomes a very expensive and a difficult proposition for a single entity to manage this size of a scale and complexity. And that's why testbeds are important and have been historically. Also, it's a defrayed common investment, so it allows a central entity and it avoids a single entity to avoid technology lock-in, but it also allows the opportunity to be a neutral venue where interoperability and reaggregation is very important. want to spend a minute on reaggregation, which is what we are seeing as the world evolves towards 5G and beyond 5G, where disaggregation has played a key role, starting all the way from the radio access network with the new paradigms such as O-RAN and Open RAN, all the way into the core where the service-based architecture, virtual network functions, NFVs are all disaggregating the entire stack. So what becomes important is the idea of reaggregating all of these disaggregated parts. Sorry, it's a little bit of a mouthful. In terms of open test beds, we feel that's going to be the backbone that's going to carry us into the 6G era. On the academic side, there is a lot of continued work that's happening on existing radio FPGA testbeds, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our platform and testbed approach here in the US. This is also very important for workforce development and training the next generation. But it also, the openness paradigm allows for innovation on lower layers, which have predominantly been proprietary and closed, especially at the scheduler, MAC, and PHY layer. Also, these testbeds provide access to a full stack, and they are predominantly softwareized, and soon in the near future will be cloud native. On the vendor ecosystem side, of course, you see shortened design cycles with access to the testbeds. It allows you to work on multiple different fabrics and platforms such as GPUs, CPUs, and FPGAs. So shifting to PAWR. PAWR, just to give a context, it's a program that was started in 2017, and it was started with the goal of, with the National Science Foundation and a wireless industry consortium of 35 member companies today as a public-private partnership to really spur and maintain US leadership in advanced wireless networking and innovation. The National Science Foundation chose us here at Northeastern University with our partners at US Ignite, a nonprofit based in Washington, DC, to be the project office of this program. This is a list of our partners. As you can see, this covers the entire value chain of telecom networks, all the way from chipset vendors to telecom companies, to service operators, to tier one vendors, SMEs, and the entire gamut is represented in this chart. The platforms. So the program was mandated to select, operationalize, design, and deploy 4 city-scale platforms here in the US. We started with the selection process late in 2017, and we culminated with 2 platforms being announced in 2018, one in 2019, and one soon to be announced, that'll be our last platform, in late 2020, early 2021. However, the slide that you're seeing, these were the technology areas that these platforms were going to enable back in 2017 and 18. Some of these have been very well investigated over these past few years, but some of these still remain quite challenging. Just to give you a flavor, our platforms holistically look at this entire range, starting from the radio front-end technologies in millimeter wave and massive MIMO, also softwareized and virtual open and O-RAN concepts. Moving on the network side, virtualization, network slicing, microservices-based architecture, as well as more future concepts that are now becoming more mainstream around artificial intelligence and spectrum optimization, which is spectrum sharing or coexistence in the same spectrum band to increase spectral efficiency. We're also looking at applications and services specifically around different verticals, not as tightly coupled as some of our European partner programs that you're going to hear about in this panel as well. But we're really trying to find canonical examples and canonical use cases that really have an impact on the technology, and how can technology help accelerate the deployment of these applications and services around cyber physical systems, unmanned aerial systems, and also the Internet of Things and big data. Some of our parameters, and I think this is still applicable and is going to be continue to be important even in the 6G era, specifically drawing your attention to the top right around artificial intelligence enabled network functions. accelerated virtualization of network architectures. We believe softwareization is here to stay, and it's continuing to go and move into the cloud, except for the RF thin skin. Spectrum sharing is very, very important here in the US. There's renewed interest, specifically between sharing of frequencies between the federal agencies, the Department of Defense, and civilian and commercial applications. So these are all the different array of disciplines that researchers in today's PAWR testbeds are looking at, are exploring, and we believe they're going to build a solid body of work as we begin to think about what 6G is going to look like. Quick status of our platforms. So as I alluded to earlier, there are 4 different platforms, and 3 of them actually are available today for remote experimentation. They were chosen to be geographically diverse and research focus independent, but the PAWR Renew testbed out in Salt Lake City, Utah is looking at massive MIMO in the sub-6 space and a completely software-defined network architecture that's extremely flexible based on commodity off-the-shelf hardware, but with majority of the intelligence lying on the software side. It's a very componentized and modular architecture that allows you to look at not just 4G and today's 5G networks, but also different waveforms that may be non-3GPP compliant or maybe Wi-Fi based. This is a platform that's available. It's been deployed outdoors at significant scale. Moving on to Cosmos, which is in West Harlem, New York, near Columbia University. They are looking at millimeter wave and X-Hall research, so looking at the optical network communication piece where you have the ability now to reprogram the physical layer at the optical layer itself, where physical light can be manipulated and modulated so that you can send real-time or near real-time signals out to the antennas from your central and distributed unit. The AirPower platform that was funded in 2019 and is in its construction and deployment phase in Raleigh, North Carolina, is going to be focused mostly on unmanned aerial systems and mobility. But the idea here is to really try to hammer down and touch on what are the technical areas or innovations that are going to be needed to support this non-terrestrial, 3-dimensional network. You'll need different channel models to explore. You are going to need to understand mobility, handoff, ultra reliable, low latency concepts. So this platform is going to really enable that experimentation in the next few years. We've also shifted our focus into the rural domain. Rural has become a very important segment. And from a research perspective, it's often been ignored. So there's going to be a rural broadband platform that we are in final stages of selection that'll be coming online. I'd alluded to Coliseum earlier, which is the world's largest RF emulator. This provides large-scale emulation capabilities that brings all of these physical worlds into the virtual world and is located at Northeastern University today. Again, is available for remote experimentation. We encourage you to reach out to us. The URLs are all at the end of this slide deck, so please feel free to reach out to us. Really quickly, the PAWR Renew team is based off a collaboration of University of Utah, Rice University, and is going to be, when fully deployed, covering 2.3 square miles of the University of Utah campus, most of which is already covered, and 1.2 square miles of downtown Salt Lake City with a 2-mile corridor in between. I already alluded to what this platform is looking at, and I encourage you to look at the website for more information. Cosmos, the main stakeholders are Rutgers University, Columbia University, NYU, and the city of New York. And in addition to millimeter wave, they also are focusing on sub-6, but also on low latency applications that are enabled by millimeter wave, such as smart intersections and dynamic optical switching technologies as well. AirPower, again, don't want to spend more time on this slide, but this is basically going to be looking at unmanned aerial systems, fixed software-defined radio nodes, and the intersection of spectrum and non-terrestrial networked nodes. And these two I'm going to skip in the interest of time. In terms of timeline, so as I earlier mentioned, this is when the platforms are available. I just want to point out that the 3 platforms are available today, and AirPower will be open to beta users later this year. By the time you hear this talk in December or in early January, we'll be online. So with that, I'm going to stop. Look forward to the discussion with the rest of the panelists. And lastly, please come join us. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Abhimanyu. This was also very interesting. So at this point of time, we will start our Q&A session. So for this purpose, I will move now into a Zoom room where we are all the speakers, and we will be answering a selected set of questions. Thank you very much. So hello everyone, let's start the second part of this panel by welcoming our panelists. Hello Alain, Serge, Abhimanyu. We have prepared a set of questions going in line with the different talks of each of the panelists, so I hope you are ready and let's go ahead. Our first question goes in line with the first of the talks on the key technologies towards 6G. I would like to ask the panelists what are the key drivers, technical and societal, influencing research programs towards 6G. So who wants to take this question?
Happy to take that one, Antonio, briefly. So indeed, as I also outlined actually in the presentation I made, so there are a number of drivers actually. Some are market drivers, some are technical or technology drivers. So again, if we take the market side, for example, there is this drive for more support of more and more verticals, vertical industries being one of the projected main revenue growth opportunity for the wireless industry, right? You take another market segment or driver is actually you see the all the nations and governments all around the world actually scrambling to launch programs around 6G for multi-years kind of programs, and that's indeed to kind of achieve some form of leadership position actually early on in the 6G so that they can actually reap the benefits of 6G early on. And obviously, if any kind of government or organization or region actually reaps the benefits, then that will impact obviously on the citizens, obviously, so societal impacts as well. And also on the societal side, you see a major element in these programs launched by the governments, like in Europe and the United States, you see sustainability, green energy being really critical. So this is indeed as part of a global policy driven by the society needs actually as we go forward. So that's on the market side. Now on the technology side, I mean, there are a number of technology trends. So I kind of highlighted in my presentation at least 3 mega trends. Like this, the data-driven networks with artificial intelligence and machine learning, but also the the trend for more and more disaggregation of the network and virtualization of the network, and that's all across domains of the networks, as well as actually the drive for new spectrum, but not only in the high frequencies, even in 6 gigahertz, 7 gigahertz kind of frequencies as well, but also new kind of spectrum regulation as well, like these dedicated licenses by regulators to vertical industries. So you see a number of technology trends. I just listed a few, the ones that I presented in my presentation, but absolutely. So these are like kind of trends, and I'm more than happy to also hear from the other panelists if they can add also up to what I just said.
So is anyone taking the floor?
Sure, I'll just add, Alain, you mentioned frequency. I think, as we move up the spectrum into the millimeter wave, sub-terahertz, true terahertz kind of frequencies, it becomes very important. And then what the trends we're seeing in beyond 5G, and I believe will be entrenched firmly in the telecom sector, will be cloud native approaches. So that's, again, goes alongside your, disaggregated kind of a comment around the trend. And from a service management orchestration perspective, it has to be very tightly coupled to solving vertical industry needs. And we're seeing that happen in 5G, but we believe on the 6G side, that'll be important. One last thing I'll say is spectrum sharing. I know in the US, we're paying a lot more attention to it. Globally, this is still something I believe it'll become very important. But this is something that in both the mid-band and also in the high band, because now you have to deal with passive incumbents who are there. So spectrum sharing, how you do it, again, incorporating real-time data-driven networking, artificial intelligence sort of concepts will be very important. So yeah, a lot of work ahead for the standardization bodies.
Not much to add, actually. Alain was quite complete in his presentation as well as in answering the questions. Of course, very important research challenges ahead of us, but this is also going to be impacted with respect to the societal dimension. As you know, even for 5G now, there is a lot of debate about the power consumption, the impact on the environment, the issues regarding to the digital consumption by citizens and so on and so forth. So societal challenges and of course industrial competition.
Yeah, in fact, very interestingly, and going in the line of what Alain just said, because typically we think of the mid-band below 6 GHz, something that is already quite exploded. But for example, today I've read one article saying that the FCC in the United States is opening now some more megahertz in the band of 5 point something
Yes.
for Wi-Fi, for the evolution of Wi-Fi to be there. So I think this is very interesting movements in this line. Manu?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say yes. So the interplay of licensed and unlicensed frequencies, and yes, they just unanimously voted on, and by the time people watch this in December, it'll be all over the news, but the 160 megahertz on the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum, which has been opened up for Wi-Fi use. So that's going to be a very key driver specifically now for a lot of the offloading purposes, but again, comes back to some of the spectrum sharing work that will need to be enabled in future releases, so that the interplay of licensed standardized technologies with the IEEE 802 world, those two worlds can mix together.
Going in the direction of the answer from Alain. Alain, what do you think is the role of AI in all these key megatrends that you were discussing? So do you really think that AI is going to become substantial part of networking technology in 6G?
Yeah.
The evolution of it?
Absolutely. I think I put actually AI ML as part of this mega trend of data-driven networks. Indeed, and even in my presentation, I think I kind of captured the role of AI in the enabling technology, both in the radio interface, but also in the network itself, right? And I mean, it's no doubt actually that AI ML, will be impacting every single element or component actually of the end-to-end network design, including in the network, obviously the device itself, right? But obviously it's not going to happen in all components or domains at the same time. So there are domains that actually lend themselves, to exploiting AI early on as compared to others. And that's very much to do with, let's say, the latency or the time constraints of these kind of domains or modules. Right. So, for example, if I just give an example, so if you take the network management, for example, right. So this is more based on kind of, less constrained kind of, less delay constraint and larger time scales, so you can afford actually to and more on big data kind of stuff that leverage sophisticated compute. So you would expect actually that AI would be in this network management early on, and I think it's already on, right? I think I also gave some examples in there with with Ericsson and Nokia and other big vendors already announcing actually AI in the network management for their 5G deployment, right? Not even beyond 5G. Right? But if you take, for example, if I go all the way down to the, let's say, the physical layer, right, in the protocol stack, right? So these tend actually, the algorithms in there, they tend actually to operate on a very tiny time scale, right? So it's either that you would have some mature kind of AI, online training, real-time training, and all the stuff, right? So it's not so obvious to straight away actually get the AI to benefit a physical layer component design. So we might see it in the physical layer, but it will take some time. And the way we approach actually AI in the physical layer, maybe in the massive MIMO feedback channel and things like that. But it's going to happen, but it will be a little bit more gradual, and we need to be weighing actually the benefits as to AI bringing a benefit to these very time constrained kind of algorithms or schemes. So AI is going to be there, but I think there is a roadmap in every single component of the system.
Okay. This panel, one of the key topics that we were trying to address is the need for research infrastructures and how can we do experimentation towards 6G in a common way, okay? My next question, going in line with what we just discussed, is, for example, how can we integrate these AI algorithms, this AI experimentation into the current developments in infrastructures for research? So how do you think is the way that we should integrate this?
Well, this is already happening, right? If you move into what's happening in the ORAN, Open RAN community, if you look at the RAN side of the house, the notion of radio intelligent controllers, both near real time and non-real time, are being implemented right now in kind of testing methodologies and test beds, specifically in the ORAN context, in some of the ORAN Alliance work that's happening, and in other consortia and alliances like Open Networking Foundation with their SD-WAN near real-time RIC implementation. So it's happening on the RF side for sure. On the core side and the edge side, it's going to work similar to how it's working in the clouds context around all the different paradigms for AI, ML, reinforcement learning. All of those techniques are sort of happening now. They're not necessarily they're on the periphery right now, but for them to become first-class citizens in a network architecture context and for them to be standardized, yes, lots more sort of work to be done in the beyond 5G and 6G sort of a context.
So I guess it means that we need also to bring this community somehow into this community that is dealing with experimentally driven research in digital infrastructures, as well as the adequate equipment that were not involved in the previous generation. And then, of course, there are a lot of issues, as mentioned by Abhimanyu, that are dealing with algorithms, with network automation, and so on and so forth. And I guess this can be a very nice playground with respect to see how far we can push the envelope of those algorithms.
Yes, indeed, I think is a very interesting part, because if you look right now at the market and what the different vendors are doing, right now we can clearly see that at the user device, we have artificial intelligence clearly there. For example, in all the mobile phones right now, all the chips in 5G will have an AI neural engine, or call it however, okay? And also, for example, in the recently new Apple silicon, okay, there is a big chunk of it, of the silicon, devoted to artificial intelligence. But we are not seeing exactly the same in the market, in the infrastructure, within the network operator. So we cannot clearly see that there is a trend towards integrating this kind of accelerators in base stations and so on. So I think this is an area that is very interesting and that can be a really good place to introduce to our research infrastructures in order for researchers to push forward this research.
Antonio, one thing I just want to add from a perspective, right? So from the research infrastructure testbed perspective, it becomes very important from these become a neutral common place where attracting these disparate siloed communities becomes very much more easier, right? So the comfort level of coming to a neutral place where some of these disciplines, and again, for those listening who set policy and who think about training the next workforce development, think about curriculum, the role of testbed sort of is amplified as you bring in all of these different technical capabilities that are required. Alan, being in industry, can attest to people he's hiring and the long learning curve that they probably have to go through before they can be meaningful research engineers and contribute. And that's something I'm sure, from an industry perspective, it would be very important. And test beds are sort of that kind of, bridge between that fundamental learning that happens for a particular technical domain, but then to sort of bring that in a more holistic system sense and carry that forward, to have an impact in the commercial sector.
In fact, this is something that we have the four of us discussed multiple times. So this concept of neutral place where you can go and do your testing and is replicable. And I think this is a very interesting part of the research infrastructures that we need to tackle in the future. But one important thing that we need also to consider is that some of the people that we want to use our technologies are not really telecommunications or computer network people. So for example, people working in industries, in manufacturing plants, okay, that they want to use our technologies and they will need to train, they will need to verify that everything will work with a decent quality of service and so on. So how do you think we can bring these people into our infrastructures? Because there is, for example, in Europe, there are some projects trying to do that. But of course, this is very difficult because it's people coming from different backgrounds. So how do you think we can bring this different expertise to our infrastructures?
Well, in some way, actually, we are already in the journey to kind of attract these, different, let's call them verticals, if you like, right, or industry verticals, right, through some engagements, straight away, actually, into the standard bodies that are defining 5G and beyond 5G. So if I take examples here, so as you are aware, there is this 5G ASIA, the Alliance of Connected Industry, right? That's very much led out of Europe, but there is equivalent also led out of China called 5G DNA, the Deterministic Federated Alliance. And these alliances are already actually signing memorandum of understandings with the 3GPP and bringing actually use cases and requirements, right, into 3GPP, so that the next, the evolution of 5G in 3GPP get actually to address these use cases, right? So this is already quite a nice, actually, testament as to the way we are engaging these. Now, at the same time, we appreciate actually that, the role of these verticals should not stop at just feeding requirements to the specifications. They have definitely another role to play, all along when these specifications get done, but also deployment, rolling out, understanding the benefits, and all the stuff. So I think we are at the beginning of, figuring out, a roadmap, if you would like to call it, right, to get the engagement of these vertical industries and their alliances into the ecosystem. But definitely more need to be done in this space. Absolutely.
Right. And the research infrastructure, again, it's a common place. It brings people out of their comfort zone, but still not, it's not that the telecom side of the house is moving to the industry side and the industry is moving into the telecom world. So the fact that research infrastructure, test beds sort of provide that kind of a common place, and multiple such efforts are, being funded both on the EU and the US side, and there's significant investment we're seeing in private deployments now, but there is still a need of trying to be able to evaluate what the technology can do, what sort of KPIs, metrics are going to be met, and it's a very exhaustive list that you begin to generate when you look at different scenarios from manufacturing to precision agriculture, industry 4.0, and then connected vehicles, as you mentioned, that alliance. So it's going to be interesting how or what would a minimum viable platform sort of look like as the evolution towards 6G or the journey continues?
Yeah, actually, regarding test platforms, I still believe it's hard to accommodate both type of target groups. I mean, namely core technology and verticals. I mean, regarding the latter, what matters are the applications.
Yeah.
The networking technology should therefore be stable and transparent, which is of course completely different from experimenting on very advanced core technology. So I believe that this will lead to an important set of platforms that could be very well articulated with and benefit from the core technology platform. So I believe the point is to have some kind of a continuum between the applications and the verticals that certainly are going to be grounded on more stable technology. And therefore, what you are interested in is certainly more the KPI that Abhimanyu was mentioning just before. And you still need to look forward with respect to very advanced technology that you can really twist so that you see again what are the boundaries. It's very difficult to, have the same platform that will, on top of which will sit the different communities of researchers, so to speak, or engineers.
Yeah, because in fact, we are seeing kind of something like this discussion on infrastructures more focused on the research side. For example, in United States, we have several platforms really focused on MIMO, massive MIMO, very low level infrastructures, okay, with basically programmable radios to do some experimentation. While on the completely opposite side of the spectrum, we have, for example, in Europe, some platforms specifically devote to some vertical scenarios, okay? Yeah. With really over-the-top platforms with orchestration, service, development in order to instantiate slices and so on. So we have a wide range of platforms that we need to federate or integrate in some way so that they are useful to a large majority of researchers in the area. So the big question is, how do we do this? Because this is extremely difficult. So how can we manage to do this conglomerate of platforms?
So, I mean, it comes back to the minimum viable platform kind of an approach. And I think where with this whole notion of, from the radio side, open disaggregated radio access networks, where all these different, central unit, distributed unit, radio unit with open interfaces paradigm is being followed and still being sort of figured out. And then moving into the core, it's already a service-based architecture with different network functions that are available that can run in a kind of a cloud environment. So the ability to mix and match becomes important. Interfaces become extremely important, and the ability to morph the network to meeting the needs of whichever target vertical that you want. Now that's the utopia, right? Like you have different constraints around real-time hardware acceleration from the application vertical perspective, and latency is a big parameter versus, in a more EMBB mobile broadband sense, it would be a little bit different. But that's sort of where that MVP, that minimum viable platform concept, is what we need to start to think about. And if there are ways to sort of do a gap analysis of what's missing, what can be standardized, what can be the secret sauce, and that's what's going to spur innovation and allow some of these. And that's what we have to do as we work towards sort of 6G, and at the end of the day, again, make test beds a little bit more prominent in within standard setting agencies, within specification bodies. And I think that move has come out, and the infrastructure is becoming important. It's already commoditized, but it's all the game of open interfaces.
I will say that I am more optimistic than in the past. Following what Abhimanyu said, I think this is because it's a continuous, design and deployment that we are moving into now, not this kind of, discrete time deployment that we have observed in the past. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the more you can learn in the previous phase, the more competitive you will be. And it's also because a large part of the network now is going to become softwareized. And the nature of the software components can really have a strong impact about this continuous design and deployment that we are observing. So I'm more optimistic, but of course, we still need to bring all the stakeholders at the same place, even starting from students, which is very, very important with respect to, again, acquiring the knowledge and the skills that you will need for being more competitive in the future. So we'll see, but the network is a computer, and again, I think we have to learn from the past experience.
Okay. Allow me to comment a bit, Antonio, on this question actually. So I see the approach in the US, right, which is more on component-oriented kind of test beds, and the approach actually in Europe, and not to be actually opposite to each other, but rather quite complementary, right? Because at the end of the day, as Abhimanyu and also Serge kind of hinted about, we are moving more towards kind of software oriented kind of platforms. To a large extent, you would see these, there is a significant overlap, right, into these the basic or the bricks, the main bricks, building bricks and blocks of these platforms, and the perhaps the differentiation depends actually on each of the vertical, right, the vertical application and the needs of that vertical application. And as long as actually the underlying plumbing, if you like, supports certain configuration in a flexible way, right, then, it's not like we need to do a huge effort to try to bring, together or converge complete different platforms. I mean, they are already by design quite common, actually. It's just the way we put them together and then customize them to the needs of that vertical. And that's actually back to your previous question, actually. That's how the European approach is quite complementary to the American approach, if I may call it this way, because then we are also, approaching it top down in Europe, when actually from the US we are approaching it bottom up, and at some point of time they will kind of very much converge.
Good point.
Okay, so we have something like 5 more minutes, okay, of time in this panel, and now that you have mentioned the possible cooperation between Europe and USA, and considering that we have here the director of PAWR and the coordinator of the PAWR project that goes exactly about this. Okay, so how do you think we can not integrate but cooperate more closely between both sides of the Atlantic? How can we try to establish common platforms that allow us to research in common aspects?
Communication, right? It's basically, and again, this post-COVID world has made things a little bit more challenging, but our cooperation over the past 18 months or so has been, pretty successful in terms of giving a viewpoint to each side as to how the other side is approaching, the development of these kind of technologies, and we play up to each other's strengths, right? So that really helps bring the complementarity. And given that everything we're doing is already softwareized and cloud-based, there's the opportunity to sort of transfer the learning and the knowledge across, both sides, and really sort of bring that and amplify that and surface that over to the top. Now, we have to sort of rethink, and Serge and I have done a little bit of thinking on what needs to be done moving forward, given that there are some physical barriers now, at least for the foreseeable future, but we don't want to lose the momentum. And we're going to adapt, but at the end of the day, we have to communicate. We have to know what the other side's doing. This is something that we've given as a first priority, and I think we have a couple tricks up our sleeve to make sure things don't begin to diverge and we don't lose in the what we have in the past 6 months or the progress we've made over the past 18 months.
Serge?
Yes, in a nutshell, I will say that we have to think and act as a scientific community. And in other domains, when they have a big research challenge, they try to understand, what kind of thought experiment they can design to provide evidence. And again, the COVID crisis has shown that providing evidence is really a very big and complex, concern. So as a scientific community, we need to think and act, and this is what we try to do all together. Of course, it's not easy. There are a lot of issues, concern, time constraints, technology, or whatsoever, but I think that's the core. If we act as a scientific community, then we can really move forward. And again, I'm more optimistic now than in the past because we did a lot already all together. And it's certainly easier to share more and to move forward maybe a bit faster these days. But again, it requires a huge effort from the community. And there are still plenty of issues that are related to how we work, how people are rewarded, what is the value of experiments, again, reproducibility and all this kind of concern. It's something that we have to address all together, I believe.
Okay.
And then we also need people like Alain and InterDigital that act as a common bridge, right? So that's actually been really, really important and helpful in sort of, keeping tabs on what's happening on the US and the EU side and, encouraging us to do that. So industry's role is paramount and is important. And, thought leaders like InterDigital are very important in that space.
Thank you very much.
Of course, I was not excluding the industry. I'm a bit older than you, and I remember in my younger times working very, closely with big industry because they were very advanced on a lot of, very important technological challenges. Of course, that's even more important as we spoke just before because of the continuous between research and industry. The more we can share, and of course, the better it is. And again, with respect to how we can develop the future platforms, personally, I continue to believe that it has to be mostly funded as a public good, but every support in kind from industry is, of course, instrumental.
Absolutely. So I think at the end of the day, yes, I'm not muted. At the end of the day, I think all these efforts will need to lead to some products, right? And these products will need to have a kind of universal, they need to be hitting the universal, the global market, right? So, and to get this, we need standards, international standards. So it means actually all these efforts that are done in the USA at the stage, in Europe, also in Japan, in South Korea, in China, right? So we need to make sure actually that these efforts are harmonized in a way, and we already have actually fora that helps us in harmonizing and driving common agendas that lead to these kind of global or universal products. And there is no better, obviously, than, for example, the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, right? There is the GSMA, the NGMN, the other alliances like the ORAN Alliance and others. So plenty of forums, actually, that we need to make sure as researchers in the academia, right? But also as industry R&D, that we all work together to kind of define a unified and global agenda, right? And not fall again back to the 2G era, where we have segmentation and different product lines for different regions, different countries. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much. The time has run out. So at this point, I will close this panel. I will first like to thank you all for being here and for being so kind to answer and to give your opinion on all these very interesting topics. So thank you very much. We close now the panel, and thank you. See you next time.
Thanks, Antonio.